My daughter said she wished she had been raised by her dad and not me. I'm Mabel, 58 years old, and I never thought I'd hear those words from my daughter's mouth. At my grandson's baby shower, Amanda stood up, champagne glass in hand, and toasted her stepfather. This is the man I wish had raised me. He will be the only true granddad of my son. The room fell silent. No one noticed when I slipped out the back door, tears streaming down my face, my heart shattered into a million pieces. If you're watching this video, I'd love to know where you're from. Please hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt invisible to someone you love. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Frank and I met during college in 1985. He was studying business and I was pursuing a degree in education. He had this infectious laugh that could light up an entire room. Whenever he smiled, these adorable dimples formed on his cheeks. I fell head over heels for him almost immediately. After 3 years of dating, we got married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. We tried to start a family right away, but pregnancy didn't come easily. For 5 years, we faced disappointment after disappointment. Just when we were considering adoption, I found out I was pregnant. The day I told Frank, he picked me up and spun me around our tiny apartment, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. That moment remains one of the happiest memories of my life. Amanda came into our world on a rainy Tuesday in April. She was 7 pounds, 2 ounces of absolute perfection. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine as I held her for the first time, and I knew in that instant I would do anything for this little human being. The overwhelming love I felt was something no one had prepared me for. "She has your eyes," Frank whispered, stroking her downy head. And he was right. Amanda had my blue eyes, though her hair would later darken to match her father's. Those early years were beautiful. I made the decision to leave my teaching position to stay home with Amanda. It was a financial stretch, but Frank supported my choice. "These years only come once," he'd say. "We'll make it work." And we did, though it meant Frank worked longer hours to compensate for my lost income. I threw myself into motherhood completely. Every first was meticulously documented. First smile, first word, first steps. I joined mommy groups, organized playdates, and spent hours reading to Amanda. She was an inquisitive child, always asking why about everything. I never tired of her questions, delighting in her curiosity and thirst for knowledge. Frank was a good father in those early years. He'd come home and immediately get down on the floor to play with Amanda no matter how exhausted he was. Weekend mornings were their special time together. He'd make pancakes shaped like animals while I slept in. I can still hear their giggles floating up from the kitchen. But as Amanda grew and Frank's work responsibilities increased, I began to notice subtle changes. He started coming home later, too tired to do much more than eat dinner and collapse in front of the TV. The weekend pancake tradition slowly faded away. When I brought it up, he'd sigh and say, "Someone has to pay the bills, Mabel." Amanda naturally gravitated more toward me as Frank became less available. I became her everything: mother, playmate, teacher, confidant. I told myself this was normal, that the bond between mother and daughter was special. I didn't see how this imbalance would later affect our family dynamic. By the time Amanda was 6, the strain in our marriage was becoming evident. Date nights became rare, conversations revolved around logistics rather than connection, and intimacy was an afterthought. I tried to talk to Frank about it, but he'd brush off my concerns. "Every marriage goes through phases, yeah," he'd say. "We're just busy right now with work and raising Amanda." But it was more than that. I felt Frank slipping away, becoming a stranger in our home. I didn't realize then that we were laying the groundwork for the heartbreak that would come. The day I discovered Frank was having an affair remains seared in my memory. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I'd taken Amanda to a doctor's appointment for a routine checkup. We finished earlier than expected, so I decided to surprise Frank at his office with lunch. His secretary looked startled when I walked in with Amanda in tow and a bag of his favorite sandwiches. "Oh, Mabel, he's in a meeting right now. Let me check if he can step out." Something in her expression made my stomach twist. She picked up the phone, spoke briefly, then gave me a forced smile. "He'll be right out." When Frank emerged from his office, his shirt was slightly rumpled, his tie askew. Behind him, a woman with long auburn hair and perfectly manicured nails slipped out, avoiding eye contact as she hurried past us. Sarah, his new marketing director that he'd mentioned a few times at dinner. "What a nice surprise," Frank said. but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Amanda ran to him, arms outstretched, unaware of the tension crackling in the air. Later that night, after putting Amanda to bed, I confronted him. At first, he denied everything, but when I mentioned specific details, the lipstick smudge I'd noticed on his collar weeks before the late nights, the sudden interest in his appearance, he crumbled. I didn't mean for it to happen, he said, his voice breaking. Sarah and I, we connected. Connected? I spat the word back at him. While I've been raising our daughter, keeping our home, supporting your career, that's how you repay me. His response cut deeper than the affair itself. You stopped seeing me years ago, Mabel. It's all about Amanda with you. I'm just the paycheck, the guy who comes home to a wife who's too exhausted from mommy duties to even ask about my day. We tried counseling. For 3 months, we sat across from a therapist who helped us unpack years of resentment and neglect. I acknowledged that perhaps I had lost myself in motherhood, while Frank admitted to feeling pushed aside. But the damage was too deep. The trust was shattered beyond repair. When we told Amanda about the divorce, she was 8 years old enough to understand something serious was happening, but too young to truly comprehend why her family was breaking apart. But I don't want 2 houses, she cried, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest. Why can't Daddy just stay here? How do you explain adult failures to an innocent child? I tried my best. Sometimes grown-ups change and can't live together anymore, but we both love you very, very much, and that will never change. The day Frank moved out, Amanda refused to say goodbye. She locked herself in her room, and no amount of coaxing could get her to come out. I sat outside her door listening to her muffled sob, feeling utterly helpless. When Frank finally left, I heard her window open. From her second-story bedroom, she watched her father drive away, only then allowing me to hold her as she cried herself to sleep. The financial reality hit immediately. Our house had been affordable with 2 incomes, but on my teacher's salary alone, it was a stretch. I took on tutoring after school and weekend shifts at a local bookstore. The exhaustion was constant, but what choice did I have? Amanda needed stability, and keeping our home seemed crucial to providing that. Frank's child support helped, but it wasn't enough to maintain our previous lifestyle. I learned to cut corners. Thrift store clothes, generic brands, no more summer camps or dance lessons. Each sacrifice stung, especially when Amanda would ask why we couldn't afford things her friends had. We're on a budget now, sweetie. Became my refrain, though I tried to shield her from the worst of our financial struggles. The first few months, Frank took Amanda every other weekend as agreed. He'd arrive promptly on Friday afternoon and return her Sunday evening. But gradually his reliability waned. A work emergency here, a scheduling conflict there. Amanda would wait by the window overnight, bag packed, only to have me deliver the news that Daddy wouldn't be coming after all. Each cancellation left a new crack in her heart and in our relationship. Though I never spoke ill of Frank, Amanda began to blame me for the divorce, for our reduced circumstances, for everything that had changed. If you'd been a better wife, Daddy wouldn't have left, she said once during a particularly heated argument about why she couldn't have the expensive sneakers her friends were wearing. Her words cut deep, but I swallowed my pain. That's not how marriage works, Amanda. Sometimes people grow apart. It wasn't anyone's fault. But in her young mind, someone had to be blamed, and I was the easiest target. I was the one saying no, setting boundaries, struggling to be both mother and father, while Frank got to be the fun weekend parent, when he showed up at all. I quickly discovered that being a single mother was like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Every morning was a race against the clock. Get Amanda ready for school, drop her off, rush to work, pick her up from after school, care help with homework, prepare dinner, handle bedtime routines, and then collapse into bed myself, only to do it all again the next day. The worst part wasn't the exhaustion or the financial strain. It was seeing the light in Amanda's eyes gradually dim. She'd once been such a bright, curious child, always asking questions, always eager to learn. Now at 9 years old, she was becoming withdrawn, her grades slipping, her attitude increasingly defiant. Amanda, please eat your dinner, I said one evening, watching her push her food around the plate. This is gross. Dad takes me to restaurants. Well, I'm sorry it doesn't meet your standards, but this is what we're having tonight, I replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. She pushed her plate away. I'm not hungry. These small rebellions became our new normal. Everything became a negotiation, a power struggle. I was trying to provide consistency and structure while she was testing every boundary, perhaps looking for proof that I too would abandon her as she felt her father had. Frank's visits continued to be unpredictable. He'd cancel at the last minute, then try to make up for it with extravagant gifts or outings when he did show up. I worried about the message this sent to Amanda, that people could disappear from your life but buy their way back into your good graces with material things. I tried to compensate for his absence by being present in every way possible, but there were only so many hours in the day. Between my teaching job and the additional work I took on to make ends meet, quality time with Amanda often got squeezed out. The guilt was crushing. There were bright spots, though they seemed too few and far between. Amanda's 10th birthday when we couldn't afford a big party, so we had a backyard camping adventure instead. Just the two of us under the stars roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. For a few hours, I glimpsed my old Amanda, laughing, curious, connected. Or the school play where she had 3 lines as a tree but beamed with pride when I presented her with a small bouquet of wildflowers afterward. "You came," she whispered, surprised, though I'd never missed an important event. "I'll always show up for you, Amanda," I promised. Always. But as she entered middle school, the distance between us grew. Frank's appearances became even more sporadic, sometimes going months without seeing Amanda. Each absence left her more angry, more hurt, and somehow that anger found its target in me. "Why doesn't he want to see me?" she asked once after Frank had canceled their weekend for the 3rd time in a row. "Your father loves you, Amanda. He's just struggling right now." It was the best explanation I could offer without bad-mouthing him. "If you hadn't driven him away, we'd still be a family." She shot back, tears streaming down her face before she slammed her bedroom door. I stood in the hallway, my hand resting against the wood of her door, wishing I could make her understand that sometimes love isn't enough to keep a family together. That I hadn't wanted this broken life for her either. But at 12 years old, all she could see was what she'd lost, not how hard I was fighting to give her what remained. The financial strain continued to mount. Our washing machine broke and I had to do laundry at the laundromat for 3 months before I could save enough for repairs. The car needed new tires. Amanda outgrew her winter coat. Each new expense felt like another wave threatening to pull me under. I started skipping meals so Amanda could have enough. I wore the same clothes year after year. I gave up any semblance of a social life. Every ounce of energy, every spare dollar went toward creating as normal a life as possible for my daughter. But no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed enough. I couldn't give her what she wanted most, her family back together. And for that, in her eyes, I remained the villain of our story. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in November. Amanda was 12 and we were in the middle of our usual homework battle at the kitchen table. "Just try the problem again," I encouraged as she glared at her math worksheet. When the phone rang, she leapt up to answer it, grateful for the interruption. Her face transformed when she heard who was on the line. "Dad, hi." Her entire body seemed to light up, and I felt the familiar mix of gratitude that she was happy and pain that it wasn't because of me. The conversation was brief, but when she hung up, she was practically vibrating with excitement. "Dad wants me to come over this weekend. He says he has big news." She paused, then added with a hint of defiance, "He's picking me up Friday after school." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Frank's big news usually meant something that would complicate our already fragile situation. When Friday came, Frank arrived in a brand new SUV looking more polished than I'd seen him in years. Designer clothes, a fresh haircut, and an air of confidence that reminded me of the man I'd married long ago. "Wow, nice car," Amanda said, clearly impressed as she threw her overnight bag into the back seat. "Wait till you see the house," Frank replied with a wink, not even bothering to get out and properly greet me. I stood on the porch, arms crossed against the November chill, watching them drive away. Something had changed, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Sunday evening, when Frank brought Amanda home, the bomb dropped. "Mom, guess what? Dad's getting married." Amanda burst through the door, eyes shining. "Her name is Patricia, and she's so cool. She's a marketing executive, and she has a son named Noah, who's 5. We're going to be a family." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. Frank had never mentioned a serious relationship during our co-parenting conversations. How long had this been going on? I forced a smile for Amanda's sake. "That's wonderful news. I'm happy for your dad." Later, after Amanda went to bed, I called Frank. Were you planning to tell me about this engagement, or was I supposed to hear it from our 12-year-old daughter? I figured Amanda would tell you, he replied, sounding irritatingly casual. Patricia and I have been together for almost a year now. The wedding's in March. Amanda's excited about being a junior bridesmaid. A year. He'd been with this woman for a year and never thought to mention it. I swallowed the hurt and focused on practical matters. Will this change our custody arrangement? Actually, yes. Patricia's house is in the Lakeside School District, much better schools. We thought Amanda might want to live with us during the week for school, and she can visit you on weekends. The audacity took my breath away. After years of minimal involvement, he was suddenly proposing to take my daughter away for the majority of the time. Absolutely not, I said firmly. Amanda's school is perfectly fine and her life is here. This is her home. Why don't we ask what she wants? Frank suggested, his tone maddeningly reasonable. And there it was, the trap. How could I compete with the shiny new life Frank was offering, a big house in an upscale neighborhood, a ready-made family with a little brother and a stepmother who by Amanda's glowing account was everything I wasn't. Glamorous, successful fun. 3 weeks later, I met Patricia at a parent-teacher conference Frank actually showed up for. She was everything I'd feared. Tall, elegant, with the kind of effortless beauty that comes from good genes and better skincare. Her handshake was firm, her smile practiced. So lovely to finally meet you, Mabel. Amanda talks about you all the time. I doubted that very much, but I returned the smile and the pleasantry. Over the next few months, I watched as Patricia systematically inserted herself into every aspect of Amanda's life. She showed up to school events that Frank had never bothered with before. She took Amanda shopping for clothes I couldn't afford. She helped with homework, arranged playdates with her son's friends' older siblings, and generally created the perfect family tableau that Amanda had been missing. And Amanda bloomed under the attention. Her grades improved. She seemed happier, more confident. She chattered constantly about life at Dad and Patricia's house, the pool, the game room, the family dinners where everyone shared their day. Each story was a knife to my heart, but I smiled and nodded, grateful that my daughter was happy, even as I grieved the growing distance between us. Mom, can I ask you something? Amanda said one night as I tucked her in. A ritual she usually claimed to be too old for now. Of course, sweetie. Anything. Would it be okay if I spent more time at Dad and Patricia's? Like maybe every weekend instead of every other? I sat on the edge of her bed, fighting to keep my expression neutral. You enjoy being there that much? She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Patricia's teaching me to bake, and Noah likes having a big sister around, and... She hesitated, then plunged ahead. Dad seems happier now. He doesn't cancel plans anymore. There it was. The unspoken accusation that had lingered between us for years. That somehow I had been the reason Frank wasn't a reliable father. That with the right woman, the right family setup, he could be the dad Amanda had always wanted. I swallowed hard, then forced the words out. If that's what you want, we can adjust the schedule. Her face lit up and she threw her arms around me. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I held her tight, wondering how doing what felt like the worst thing in the world had somehow made me the best in her eyes. As I turned off her light and closed her door, I realized with devastating clarity that I was losing her one weekend at a time. By the time Amanda entered high school, our relationship had deteriorated to the point where we were essentially housemates who occasionally shared a meal. She spent every weekend and most school breaks with Frank and Patricia, returning to my house only for the mandatory weeknight stays that maintained the fiction of joint custody. When she was 15, the inevitable conversation happened. Mom, I want to live with Dad and Patricia full-time. We were in the kitchen. I was preparing a special dinner, her favorite lasagna, hoping to create a moment of connection. The words stopped me cold, the knife I'd been using to chop basil suspended in midair. Why? It was all I could manage to ask. Amanda sighed, the exasperated sound of a teenager who believed adults were deliberately obtuse. It just makes more sense. All my friends are in that neighborhood now. The school is better. I have my own room there that's twice the size of the one here. All practical reasons that neatly avoided the emotional truth. She preferred their company to mine their lifestyle to what I could provide. And what about us? Our time together, I asked, setting down the knife before I cut myself. She shrugged, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Another gift from Patricia. We hardly see each other anyway. I'm always doing activities or homework, and it's not like you have time for me with all your jobs. The unfairness of that statement burned. I had taken on multiple jobs precisely for her, to keep her in dance classes, to afford the laptop she needed for school, to create some semblance of the life she would have had if our family had remained intact. Amanda, everything I've done has been for you. She rolled her eyes. See, that's exactly it. You're always making me feel guilty, like I owe you something just for being my mom. That's not what I... Just forget it. She cut me off. Dad already talked to his lawyer. He's filing for a custody modification. I'll be 16 soon anyway, and the court will listen to what I want. The clinical way she delivered this information, as if we were discussing a business transaction rather than the dismantling of our life together, left me breathless. When had my sweet little girl become this cold, calculating teenager? Is this really what you want? I asked quietly. For a moment, her facade cracked, and I glimpsed uncertainty in her eyes, but it hardened again just as quickly. Yes, it is. The custody modification was granted with minimal fuss. The judge noted Amanda's age and clear preference, as well as the excellent academic and extracurricular opportunities available in Frank's school district. I was granted 1 weekend a month and half of major holidays, the same schedule Frank had largely ignored for years. The day Amanda moved her things out of my house was surreal. Frank rented a small moving truck, though she didn't have that much to take. Patricia orchestrated the whole thing with clipboard efficiency, checking items off a list as the men loaded furniture. You can leave the desk, I said, watching them struggle with the antique writing desk that had been my grandmother's. It's a family heirloom. I'd like it to stay here. Amanda looked at Patricia, who gave a small shake of her head. I need a desk for schoolwork, Mom. You hardly use it. So the desk went too, along with most of the contents of her room. I stood in the driveway as the truck pulled away, Amanda in the passenger seat of Patricia's luxury SUV, offering a half-hearted wave as they disappeared around the corner. That night, I sat in her empty room, running my hands over the indentations in the wall where posters had hung, the slight discoloration of the carpet where her bed had stood for years. The physical absence of her belongings was just a visible manifestation of the emotional void her absence had created in my life. For the first time since the divorce, I allowed myself to cry without restraint. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. I cried for the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, for the child who once looked at me like I hung the moon, for the teenager who now viewed me as little more than an obligation. The monthly weekend visits were awkward affairs. Amanda would arrive with an overnight bag, spend most of the time texting her friends, and count the hours until she could return to what she now called home, Frank and Patricia's house. How's school going? I'd ask, desperate for any connection. Fine. Are you still enjoying debate club? It's okay. One-word answers, eyes glued to her phone. The distance between us seemed insurmountable. When Amanda turned 18 and graduated high school, I sat in the audience at her ceremony, 3 rows behind Frank, Patricia, and their picture-perfect blended family. Noah, now 11, held a giant bouquet of roses. Patricia had coordinated their outfits, all in complementary shades of blue. I wore a dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, wanting to look my best for the photos. But when families gathered after the ceremony, I hovered on the periphery as Frank's parents, Patricia's family, and various friends clustered around Amanda for pictures. Mom, come get in this one, Amanda called an afterthought. I stood stiffly beside her, acutely aware that this was the only photo of the day that would include me. Later at the graduation party Patricia had organized at their home, I felt like a guest rather than a parent. People I didn't know congratulated me on raising such a wonderful young woman, unaware that I'd had minimal involvement in her life for the past several years. As I prepared to leave, Amanda approached me looking uncomfortable. So I wanted to tell you, I'm not going to be able to visit much this summer. I got an internship in Chicago, and Patricia's cousin is letting me stay with her. Oh, I tried to mask my disappointment. That sounds like a great opportunity. Yeah, it's in marketing. Patricia set it up. She hesitated, then added, I won't be bringing my stuff back to your house at all. doesn't really make sense since I'll go straight to college in the fall. I nodded, understanding the subtext. My home was no longer her home in any sense. Will I see you before you leave for college? She shrugged. Maybe. I'll be pretty busy. As I drove home alone that night, I realized with stark clarity that my role in Amanda's life had been reduced to that of a distant relative. Someone to be acknowledged at major life events, but not an active participant in her daily existence. The small, persistent hope that things would improve once she matured enough to understand my sacrifices began to fade. Perhaps this estrangement wasn't a phase. Perhaps this was our new permanent reality. The years passed with a surreal speed. Amanda went to college, the same university where Frank and Patricia had both attended naturally. She majored in marketing, following in Patricia's footsteps. Our communication dwindled to holiday phone calls and the occasional obligatory visit when she was in town. Meanwhile, I threw myself into rebuilding a life that wasn't centered around motherhood. I returned to school, earning a master's degree in education. I took a position as a curriculum specialist at a progressive school where my ideas were valued and my experience respected. I made friends, joined a book club, started hiking on weekends. Slowly, the raw wound of Amanda's rejection began to scab over, not heal. I don't think a mother ever fully recovers from losing her child's love, but the pain became manageable, a dull ache rather than a sharp, constant agony. I learned about Amanda's life primarily through social media. Her college graduation, which I attended sitting alone in the vast auditorium. Her first job at a marketing firm in Chicago, Patricia's connections again. Her vacation to Europe with friends, funded no doubt by Frank and Patricia. And then, the post that stopped my scrolling thumb, culled a close-up of her left hand, a diamond ring sparkling on her finger with the caption, "I said yes, engaged at future Mrs. Clarkson." I stared at my phone, tears welling up. My daughter was engaged, and I'd found out along with her 847 other social media connections. Not a call, not a text, just a public announcement that made it clear where I stood in her life. I waited a day, hoping she might reach out personally. When she didn't, I swallowed my pride and called her. "Amanda, congratulations on your engagement. I'm so happy for you." "Oh, thanks, Mom." She sounded distracted. "Sorry I didn't call. It's been crazy with all the excitement." "Tell me about him. James, right? How did you meet?" She seemed surprised that I knew his name, as if I wouldn't have scrutinized every detail of her public posts about her relationship. "We met through work. He's in account management." Patricia actually introduced us at a company function. She knows his mom from college. Of course she did. Patricia's influence extended into every corner of Amanda's life. "That's wonderful. I'd love to meet him sometime." "Sure, maybe when we're in town for wedding planning." Speaking of which, Patricia and I are going dress shopping next weekend. She's found the most amazing bridal boutique. The conversation continued in this vein, Amanda sharing details about wedding plans that Patricia was clearly orchestrating, with no mention of any role I might play. Mother of the bride, as far as Amanda was concerned, Patricia had filled that position for years. When the wedding invitation arrived, it was addressed simply to Ms. Mabel Thompson. No mother of the bride notation, no special designation at all. Just another name on the guest list. The ceremony was as lavish as I'd expected. Hundreds of guests, a historic cathedral, flowers flown in from South America. I wore a modest blue dress that had seemed elegant in the department store but felt woefully inadequate amid the designer outfits surrounding me. I was seated in the third row behind Frank's family. Patricia, as mother of the bride, wore a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She fussed over Amanda's veil in the moments before the ceremony, the picture of maternal devotion. During the reception, I sat at a table with distant cousins and family friends I barely knew. Amanda and James made their rounds, spending mere minutes at our table before moving on. When it came time for toasts, Frank spoke eloquently about watching his daughter grow into an amazing woman. Patricia tearfully described her joy at having Amanda come into her life. I wasn't asked to speak. As I watched Amanda dance with Frank then, with Noah, now a teenager in a perfectly tailored suit, I felt like a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. Present but unseen, unnecessary to the celebration. Later, as I prepared to leave, Amanda caught me near the coat check. "You're going already, Mom?" "Yes, it's getting late and I have a long drive." In truth, I'd booked a hotel room nearby, but I couldn't bear to stay any longer to keep smiling through the pain. She hesitated, then gave me a quick perfunctory hug. "Thanks for coming." Amanda, I said, holding onto her arm gently. I'm so proud of you and so happy for you and James. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps at the sincerity in my voice. But then someone called her name and she was gone, swept back into the celebration, leaving me alone once more. In the hotel room that night, I scrolled through the handful of photos I'd managed to take at the wedding. My beautiful daughter in her wedding gown, radiant with happiness. None of the pictures included me. The news of Amanda's pregnancy came via text message 6 months after the wedding. Thought you'd want to know. James and I are expecting, due in August. No phone call, no excited sharing of details, just a clinical notification as if she were updating a distant acquaintance. I called immediately, my heart racing with a complicated mix of emotions, joy at becoming a grandmother, hurt at the impersonal way I'd been informed, hope that perhaps a grandchild might create a new bridge between us. Amanda, that's wonderful news. How are you feeling? Pretty good, actually. No morning sickness, which Patricia says is lucky. She had terrible morning sickness with Noah. And there it was. Patricia inserted into the conversation within the first 30 seconds. I pushed aside the familiar sting and focused on my daughter. Are you and James excited? Do you know if it's a boy or girl yet? We find out next week. Patricia's coming to the ultrasound with us. She's already talking about planning the nursery. Each mention of Patricia was a small cut, but I maintained my enthusiasm. I'd love to help too. Maybe I could come visit, help you prepare. A pause. Sure, maybe. It's pretty hectic right now with work and everything. I recognized the polite deflection for what it was, but pressed on. Well, what about a baby shower? I'd be happy to help organize one. Oh, Patricia's already planning it. At the country club where she and Dad are members. It's going to be in June. By the end of the call, it was clear that my role in this grandchild's arrival would be as peripheral as my role had been in Amanda's wedding. An invited guest, nothing more. True to form, the baby shower invitation arrived 3 weeks later. An elaborate affair at an exclusive country club hosted by grandmother-to-be Patricia Wilson. No mention of me at all. I shopped carefully for a gift, wanting to give something meaningful despite my limited budget. I finally settled on a handmade quilt created by a local artisan with woodland animals that could work for either gender. I added a small silver rattle that had been given to Amanda when she was born, a family heirloom I'd saved all these years. The shower itself was exactly as I'd feared. Over 50 guests, mostly Patricia's friends and family, with a handful of Amanda's friends thrown in. Elaborate floral arrangements, a champagne fountain with sparkling cider for Amanda, and a dessert table that belonged in a magazine. I found myself once again seated at the periphery watching as Patricia held court, her hand constantly on Amanda's shoulder or stomach, the very picture of the doting grandmother-to-be. When gift opening time came, my carefully wrapped package was lost in the mountain of expensive presents. Amanda opened the quilt and rattle with a brief, "Thanks, Mom," before moving on to the next gift, a top-of-the-line stroller from Patricia and Frank. After the shower, I approached Amanda hoping for a moment of connection. "The nursery theme is safari animals, actually," she said, looking at the woodland quilt with barely disguised disappointment. "But this is nice. Very handmade looking. The rattle was yours when you were a baby," I said softly. "Your grandmother gave it to you." She glanced at the silver rattle as if seeing it for the first time. "Oh, I didn't realize." "I have other things saved too. Your first outfit, some special toys. Maybe when the baby's born, you might want them." Before she could answer, Patricia appeared, wrapping an arm around Amanda's shoulders. "The caterer needs to know about the cake timing, dear. Oh, Mabel, wasn't the shower lovely? I'm so glad you could make it." And just like that, I was dismissed, my attempt at connection severed by Patricia's effortless interruption. In the weeks that followed, I made several attempts to be included in preparations for my grandchild's arrival. I offered to help set up the nursery, to cook and freeze meals for after the birth, to be present for the delivery if Amanda wanted. Each offer was gently but firmly rebuffed. "Patricia's already painting the nursery. She used to do interior design, you know. Patricia's arranged for a meal delivery service for the first month. We're only allowed 2 people in the delivery room, and James and Patricia will be there." Patricia. Always Patricia. Then came the baby shower. The event that would shatter what remained of my relationship with my daughter. The country club ballroom was transformed into an elegant safari-themed wonderland. Tasteful decorations, expensive centerpieces, a professional photographer capturing every moment. I wore my best dress, still woefully inadequate compared to Patricia's designer ensemble, and tried to blend in with the crowd of strangers who somehow had more claim to my daughter's life than I did. Midway through the event, Amanda stood to thank everyone for coming. Her pregnancy glow made her more beautiful than ever, and despite everything, my heart swelled with love for her. James and I are so grateful to everyone for celebrating with us today. She began, one hand resting on her rounded belly. But I especially want to thank the person who has been my rock throughout this journey, and honestly, throughout my whole life. For a wild, hopeful moment, I thought she might be referring to me. That some maternal instinct awakened by her own pregnancy had made her recognize the depth of a mother's love. Patricia, Amanda continued, turning to her stepmother with tears in her eyes. You've been more than a stepmom to me. You've been the mother I needed when I was growing up, and now you're going to be the most amazing grandmother to my son. The room erupted in awes and applause. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the picture of modest emotion. Amanda wasn't finished. Raising her glass of sparkling cider, she continued, To Patricia, this is the woman I wish had raised me from the beginning. She will be the only true grandmother my son will ever need. The words hit me like physical blows, each syllable a knife to my heart. The room spun around me, faces blurring as tears filled my eyes. No one noticed as I gathered my purse and slipped out the side door. No one called after me as I walked to my car, legs trembling so badly I could barely stay upright. No one cared that I drove away from my only daughter's baby shower with tears streaming down my face, my heart shattered beyond repair. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of grief and disbelief. I called in sick to work, unable to face colleagues' innocent questions about the baby shower. I barely ate or slept, replaying Amanda's words over and over in my mind. The woman I wish had raised me. The only true grandmother my son will ever need. Had I really been such a terrible mother? Had all my sacrifices, all my love meant nothing? How could Amanda so publicly denounce me, erase me from her life and her child's life? On the third day, something shifted inside me. The crushing pain began to transform into clarity. I realized I had a choice to make. I could continue to chase after Amanda's approval, accepting whatever scraps of connection she deigned to offer. Or I could finally acknowledge the reality of our situation and make decisions based on self-respect rather than desperate hope. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote Amanda a letter. A real letter, pen on paper, not a text or email that could be easily dismissed. Dear Amanda, I began the words, flowing more easily than I'd expected. I've spent days trying to process what happened at your baby shower, and I've realized some painful truths that I need to share with you. For 28 years, I have loved you with every fiber of my being. From the moment I knew you existed, my life has revolved around trying to give you the best life possible. When your father left us, I worked multiple jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I sacrificed sleep, friendships, my own dreams. Not because I felt obligated, but because that's what a mother's love looks like. I understand that my best wasn't always good enough. I couldn't give you the material comforts that Patricia and your father provided. I wasn't perfect. No parent is. But I showed up, Amanda. Every day I showed up for you, even when it was hard, even when you pushed me away. To hear you publicly declare that you wish Patricia had raised you, that she will be your son's only true grandmother, was a pain I cannot adequately describe. It felt like my entire life. All the love, all the sacrifice, all the sleepless nights and skipped meals and lonely evenings meant nothing to you. I've spent years accepting crumbs of your attention, hoping that someday you would see me, really see me, and understand the depth of my love for you. I've swallowed my hurt when you've excluded me from important moments in your life. I've smiled through the pain of watching Patricia take my place in every meaningful way. But I cannot continue this way. For my own well-being, I need to step back. I will always be your mother. That is an immutable fact. I will always love you with a fierceness that only a mother can understand. But I can no longer subject myself to the ongoing rejection and erasure that has characterized our relationship for too long. When your son is born, please know that I would love to be part of his life, but I will not beg for scraps of time with him. I will not accept being treated as less than Patricia or having my role as your mother and his grandmother diminished or denied. The door is always open if you wish to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. But until then, I need to protect my heart and my dignity. I wish you, James, and your baby every happiness. With eternal love, Mom. I sealed the letter in an envelope, addressed it, and drove to the post office to mail it. As I watched the postal worker take it away, I felt a curious mixture of grief and relief. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without apology or accommodation. Then I went home and began the difficult process of letting go of expectations, of accepting that Amanda might never respond, that my grandchild might grow up not knowing me, that the family I had sacrificed everything for might never again include me. I didn't attend the birth of my grandson, Thomas James Clarkson. I learned of his arrival through a generic social media announcement. I sent a gift, another handmade item this time, a small knitted blanket, with a simple card expressing my congratulations and love. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't receive one. For 3 months, I heard nothing from Amanda. I focused on my work, my friends, my hobbies, building a life that wasn't centered around waiting for my daughter's attention. It was hard, terribly hard, but also necessary. For perhaps the first time since Amanda was born, I put my own well-being first. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, as I was grading papers at my kitchen table, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Amanda standing there, dark circles under her eyes, a baby carrier in one hand. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "can we come in?" I stepped back wordlessly, my heart hammering as Amanda entered my home for the first time in years. She set the baby carrier on the coffee table, and I caught my first glimpse of my grandson, a tiny, perfect face framed by a blue knit cap, peacefully sleeping. "This is Thomas," Amanda said softly, watching my face. "Your grandson." "He's beautiful," I whispered, afraid to move closer without permission. "He looks like you did as a baby." Amanda nodded, then sank onto my couch, suddenly looking exhausted beyond her years. "Can we talk, Mom?" I sat across from her, keeping the coffee table between us, afraid to hope for what this visit might mean. "Of course." She stared at her hands for a long moment before speaking. "I got your letter 3 months ago. I've read it probably 50 times since then." I waited, not trusting myself to respond. "At first, I was angry," she continued. "I thought you were being selfish, making my pregnancy about you. But then Thomas was born and everything changed." Her eyes filled with tears. The first night home from the hospital was horrible. Thomas wouldn't stop crying. James had to go back to work the next day and was sleeping in the guest room. I was alone trying to breastfeed, failing, sobbing, along with my baby at 3 in the morning. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I called Patricia. She said she'd come over in the morning, that I should just give him a bottle and get some sleep. But I couldn't reach the formula on the top shelf, and I was too exhausted to even stand up. And suddenly, all I wanted was my mom. I wanted you." The admission hung in the air between us. "These past 3 months have been the hardest of my life," Amanda continued. "Patricia comes over, takes perfect photos for social media, holds Thomas when he's calm, then leaves when he starts crying. She's redecorated the nursery twice because the first color scheme wasn't photographing well." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Dad's barely involved. He comes by for an hour after work, sometimes holds Thomas at arm's length like he's a ticking bomb, then makes an excuse about work emails." I remained silent, sensing she needed to get this all out without interruption. "Last week, Patricia and Dad had a huge fight at our house. Apparently, he's been having an affair with his assistant. Patricia was screaming about how she gave up her career to raise his kids, meaning Noah and me. And this is how he repays her." Amanda's voice cracked. And I realized she didn't love me for me. I was just part of the perfect family image she wanted to create. The moment that image cracked, all she cared about was what she'd sacrificed, what she deserved. Not about me, not about Thomas. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face now. "And I started thinking about what you wrote in your letter, about showing up every day, even when it was hard. And I realized that's what you did, Mom. You showed up. You weren't perfect, but you were there. Always." Her words unlocked something in me, and I felt tears on my own cheeks. I tried, Amanda. I tried so hard. I know that now. She moved from the couch to kneel in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Becoming a mother myself. It's opened my eyes to how hard it must have been for you. Raising me alone, working multiple jobs, dealing with my attitude. She squeezed my hands. The things I said at the baby shower? I was wrong, Mom. So wrong. I was caught up in this fantasy of Patricia as the perfect mother, but it was just that. A fantasy. She played the role when it was convenient, when it made her look good. You lived it every day, even when it was messy and hard and thankless. The baby stirred in his carrier, making small grunting noises. Amanda glanced over, then back at me. Would you like to hold your grandson? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Amanda carefully lifted Thomas from his carrier and placed him in my arms. He was warm and solid, his tiny face scrunched in momentary displeasure before settling against my chest. Hello, Thomas, I whispered, running a finger over his velvet cheek. I'm your grandma. As I held him, rocking slightly in the instinctive way of mothers and grandmothers everywhere, Amanda watched us with fresh tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the horrible things I said, for shutting you out, for not seeing all you did for me. I was blind and selfish and cruel. I looked up from Thomas's perfect face to my daughter's tear-streaked one. Why now, Amanda? Why after all this time? She took a deep breath. Partly because of becoming a mother myself. Partly because seeing Patricia's true colors made me question everything. But mostly because of your letter. You told your truth without attacking me, without guilt-tripping me. You set a boundary while still leaving the door open. It was the most honest thing anyone's ever written to me. She wiped her eyes again. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I've hurt you deeply and repeatedly, but I'm hoping we can start rebuilding. That you might be willing to be part of Thomas's life. And mine. I looked down at my grandson, then back at my daughter. 28 years of love, hurt, hope, and disappointment swirled within me. It would be easy to hold on to the pain to protect myself from future rejection. But looking at Amanda, really seeing her not as the ungrateful child who had wounded me, but as a new mother struggling to find her way, I felt something shift. I would like that very much, I said finally. But things will need to be different, Amanda. I can't go back to being an afterthought in your life. I deserve better than that. She nodded earnestly. I know, I want things to be different too. I want Thomas to know his grandmother, his real grandmother, who knows what it actually means to show up for someone you love. Thomas began to fuss in my arms, his little face reddening with effort. Amanda reached for him automatically. He's probably hungry, she said, then hesitated. Do you mind if I feed him here? I brought a bottle. Of course not. Make yourself at home. The phrase felt strange on my tongue, inviting my own daughter to feel at home in my house after so many years of estrangement. As Amanda prepared the bottle, moving around my kitchen with the harried efficiency of a new mother, I watched her with a mixture of love and caution. The wounds between us were deep and would take time to heal. There would be awkward moments, perhaps more hurt feelings, definitely difficult conversations ahead. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope that had sustained me through the worst of our estrangement, but something calmer and more grounded. A quiet certainty that whatever happened next, I would be okay. And maybe, just maybe, my relationship with my daughter could be rebuilt into something authentic and strong. As Amanda settled back on the couch with Thomas in her arms, she looked up at me with a tentative smile. Would you show me how to burp him properly? I can never seem to get it right. Of course, I said, moving to sit beside her. I'd be happy to. And in that simple exchange, a daughter asking for help, a mother offering it freely, the first fragile threads of our new relationship began to weave together. 2 years have passed since that evening when Amanda appeared on my doorstep with baby Thomas. Our relationship has been rebuilt slowly, carefully, with intention and honesty on both sides. Those first few months were tentative. Weekly visits stretched into twice weekly, then more. I became the person Amanda called at 2 a.m. when Thomas was teething and inconsolable. I taught her the songs and rhythms that had soothed her as a baby. I held her hand through Thomas's first fever, his first steps, his first words. Frank and Patricia divorced 6 months after Thomas was born. The affair with his assistant had been going on for years, it turned out, a painful echo of our own marriage's end. Patricia, without Frank's financial support, quickly lost interest in playing grandmother. Her visits became less frequent, her perfect Instagram posts featuring Thomas all but disappeared. Amanda was devastated at first, feeling doubly betrayed. She promised she'd always be there for me for Thomas, she told me one evening as we sat on my porch watching Thomas toddle around the yard. Just like she promised Dad she'd always be there for him. Some people are better at promising than delivering, I said carefully, not wanting to speak ill of Patricia despite everything. You never promised anything, Amanda replied thoughtfully. You just showed up every day. Gradually, Amanda began to share more about her childhood perceptions. How she'd blamed me for the divorce because I was the parent who remained the one setting boundaries while Frank got to be the fun weekend dad. How Patricia had subtly encouraged this narrative, positioning herself as the mother Amanda deserved rather than the flawed human one she had. I think I needed to believe that perfect family was real, she confessed. That if only I'd been raised by Dad and Patricia, everything would have been better. It was easier than accepting that sometimes families break and no one gets the perfect childhood. For my part, I shared my own regrets and shortcomings. How I'd been so focused on providing materially that I'd sometimes neglected the emotional connection. How my resentment toward Frank had occasionally colored my parenting. How desperately I'd wanted to give her everything, but had been limited by circumstances beyond my control. These conversations were difficult, often painful, but necessary. Each one cleared away another layer of misunderstanding and hurt, bringing us closer to a relationship based on truth rather than fantasy or obligation. Today, I have a key to Amanda and James's house. I watch Thomas 3 days a week while Amanda works part-time at a marketing firm. My home has a dedicated Thomas room filled with toys and books. We have family dinner every Sunday night. Frank has become a peripheral figure in Amanda's life. Occasional phone calls, birthday and Christmas visits. Patricia has moved to Florida with a new boyfriend, her promises of eternal devotion to Thomas forgotten. But Amanda seems at peace with these changes, no longer chasing the approval of people who can't or won't fully show up for her. Last month at Thomas's second birthday party, a simple backyard affair with a few neighborhood friends, Amanda raised her glass in a toast. To my mom, she said, looking directly at me with tears in her eyes. The strongest, most loving, most persistent woman I know. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Thomas and I are so blessed to have you in our lives. The words healed something in me that I hadn't realized was still broken. Not because I needed public acknowledgement, but because I could see that Amanda truly understood now. She saw me, really saw me, as the mother I had always tried to be. Motherhood isn't perfect. It's messy and difficult and heartbreaking at times. But it's also the most profound expression of love I've ever known. It's showing up day after day through rejection and pain and misunderstanding. It's keeping the door open even when it seems permanently closed. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is giving them the space to find their way back to you. And sometimes the greatest gift is when they finally do. As I watch my daughter and grandson playing in the yard, his squeals of laughter mingling with her gentle encouragement, I am filled with a peace I once thought impossible. Our story isn't finished. In many ways, it feels like we're just beginning a new chapter. But this time, we're writing it together with eyes wide open and hearts fully engaged. If you're going through something similar with your own child or parent, I hope our story gives you courage. Relationships can heal even after years of hurt. Love can find its way back even through the darkest times. And sometimes the most precious things in life are those we've had to fight the hardest to reclaim. Would you share in the comments if you've experienced estrangement in your family? How did you handle it? Did reconciliation ever come? And please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of family healing and redemption. Remember, as long as there's breath, there's hope for healing. Thank you for listening to my story.